Matt, it's good to talk with you.
Likewise.
Fantastic Four first steps, man. All right, first of all, how excited were you when you landed this gig? 'Cause I know you're a fan of the comics.
I am. I'm a huge fan. No, it was amazing. Yeah, I remember I was at Comic-Con in 2019 because I was there for WandaVision, and Kevin Feige went up on stage at the end and said, and the X-Men are coming, and the Fantastic Four are coming. And I remember thinking, oh my God, that's so exciting. I wonder who's going to direct that. And years later, here I am. So it's really a pinch me moment. It's pretty cool.
I was in that room when he made that announcement. It was exciting. It was an exciting time.
Yeah.
You mentioned WandaVision. What's it with you in like retro styled programs, man? It's like you've got that market cornered when it comes to like retro style superhero stuff.
Yeah, it's probably a very small market at this point. Yeah, I'm not sure what else I can do with it.
So it doesn't matter.
No, it's just, it's funny. They are connected in some way in that Wanda, it was really about a family, husband and wife, children, and it was about creating a really authentic, stylized world. That one was sitcoms, obviously. This one's a real Earth, and it's a 60s retro future Earth in a different universe. So it's got some of the similar challenges, but it's also different in some big ways too. So it was really fun to build this world and imagine, what a 60s would look like that had Reed Richards, the smartest man in the universe, inventing technology for 20 or 30 years, even before he became Mr. Fantastic.
Was doing it in this retro future style something that was always the plan? Because that's not something that you naturally think, this is what audiences want from my superheroes.
Yeah. I mean, it started with this idea of putting them in the 60s, just because that's when they were created. They were created in the early 60s in the middle of the space race, and their DNA is really that time. It's the optimism of, conquering the unknown, and with the right technology, the right heart, the right mind, you can do anything. And that's really something that I wanted to include, and I wanted to feel not just in them, but in their world. I wanted to see them as right stuff astronauts, as the Apollo 11 astronauts heading up, and to make space feel dangerous, and to make space feel scary, and conquering the unknown to be a big thing. So 60s felt right for who they are as characters, but then they're really famous, popular characters. They're the leading lights of their age. They're very public figures. We would have known about them if they had existed in our 60s. They would have helped out during other, Marvel events. They would have been there when Thanos came. And they weren't, so where were they? They clearly couldn't be in our timeline. So that's why we wanted to put them on a different Earth, in a different universe, which is where Earth 828 came from. And then we had fun just being like, okay, well, what's this Earth all about, And this is an Earth that had Reed Richards, like I said, and so that's why its design aesthetic is different.
It does feel like you've created like this utopian sort of society for the Fantastic Four to exist in. Yeah. Was there any like shows, movies from that time that influenced that vision?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, it was inspired. We talked a lot about a world that was where Kirby meets Kubrick. So Jack Kirby meets Stanley Kubrick. How do you combine the best of that initial Fantastic Four run from Kirby and Lee in the 60s with Stanley Kubrick in 2001, the sort of the best of futurism of that time, Stanley Kubrick was amazing at imagining what space would feel like, and so it really was about putting those two together. But we were influenced by so many things. We were influenced by the World's Fair in New York in the mid-60s, which had its saucer-shaped buildings and monorails, and we thought, gee, wouldn't it be fun if that is what the whole city was, We were influenced by Sid Mead, amazing concept artist at the time who worked in movies, later on Blade Runner and stuff, but he was a big influence on sort of futurism, retrofuturism of the time. But we looked at everything from The Graduate and Thomas Crown Affair to The Right Stuff and Apollo 13. We were inspired by everything.
When I see the movie, I'm picking up elements from a lot of different comics runs. Tom DeFalco's run was the one I grew up with, but a lot of Jonathan Hickman as well. I think a lot of Jonathan Hickman. Were those some of the runs that you were leaning on when you were developing the story for this?
Yeah, so many amazing creators in 60 plus years of comics history. It's kind of amazing standing on the shoulders of all these giants. We're very lucky. Kirby and Lee, of course, we looked at that extensively. We looked at FF1, of course. We've got Mole Man. We've got a lot of those classic elements from FF1. We looked at 48, 49, and 50, which is where the Surfer and Galactus and the Watcher appear. We leaned heavily into that. But then moving on, Byrne was a big influence, Hickman was a big influence, Fraction, Wade, Dan Slott, Ryan North's current run. I mean, really, it's just kind of a murderer's row of all the people who've tackled these characters, and I think it speaks to these characters and their timelessness, right? And yet they're also very timely. Like you can tell a story about now using them, you can tell a story about them in the '60s. You know, they're evergreen in terms of they're a wonderful family, they're super relatable, and they have wonderful adventures, and so they continue to be reinvented by great artists.
I was thinking about this movie in relation to Superman. It just came out a couple weeks ago, and how they're both, you know, sort of golden age characters that are difficult to adapt to the big screen and make contemporary and, I guess, quote unquote cool, right?
Right.
What was the challenge in tackling that with Fantastic Four?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I wanted to put him in the 60s in a way, right? I didn't want to apologize for that optimism. You know, it's so much a part of who they are. And it's a little bit like meeting Cap in World War II, right? You know, and then maybe later we'll see them as a fish out of water somewhere, you know. But that idealism and that idea that with the right heart, right mind, right technology, you can solve anything is really much a part of who they are. And you know, I think that optimism is really important right now. We live in a world with a lot of division and stuff, and so it's nice when you can go see a world that's been united by common cause, and yeah.
Were you surprised that I was kind of a little bit surprised by this, by how excited people were to have Mole Man in this movie? Like people were like, he's got to be Mole Man, right? Mole Man's got to be in this movie. Were you a little bit surprised by that?
Oh, Mole Man's great.
Mole Man's awesome in the movie.
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. Oh, Paul Walter Hauser's great, and he's fun. And no, I always knew that I really wanted Mole Man in the movie, and I really wanted to figure. What I loved was that we had 4 years in. That's how long they've been the Fantastic Four in our film. Almost all of the Kirby and Lee run is basically backstory, and so we could tap into that, whether it's Puppet Master or Mad Thinker or Red Ghost or Mole Man. We could use these folks to kind of tell our story and lean on for history. And I love this idea that Mole Man and Sue were like buddies, and that like they understood each other. Like they were both leaders, they were both, they both got it, and so that's what we kind of leaned into. They were really great together.
So you got this amazing cast, this ensemble. You got Pedro Pascal, not a gigantic cast though, but you got this ensemble: Pedro Pascal, Vanessa Kirby, Eva Moss-Baccarat, Joseph Quinn. Talk to me about bringing them together and what they were like, the dynamic, because you have having them portray this family, this close-knit family.
Yeah.
Talk about the dynamic on set between the four of them.
It was great. I mean, they had immediate chemistry. They kind of fell in love with each other right away, which was awesome. We did 3 weeks of rehearsal because I really wanted to have a chance to bring them together and work on all of that family stuff and have all those great conversations about history so they could feel lived in by the time we got to set. It's rough when you start day one, let's go, okay, you're a family, action. It's much easier if you can rehearse together. I come from theater and I believe in it, and I think it was really helpful for creating those characters. And it was also an opportunity to create a unified style and tone for the movie as well, get everybody on board this world that we were building, which was pretty wacky. So I think that was a big part of it. But each of them individually, I just knew was the right person for their character. And the characters are tricky, and they really need actors of great range to be able to play them. And so I was lucky to get these amazing 4.
So who had the most fun, you think, getting into their character? Because this movie, one of the things that's great about it is that it is just so much fun.
Yeah.
It looks like it was a ton of fun to actually shoot. So which one of these actors do you think was having the most fun getting into their role?
I think all great actors have fun when they play. There's a playfulness to it, right? Like we're all great actors when we're kids in the sandbox, right? When we start to get older, we forget about that, and it's like I feel like actors have these vivid imaginations. They're always in a sandbox in a way, and that's what allows them to be so magical. And so I think all 4 of these guys are incredibly playful and are always finding things. Evan is amazing and certainly a great improviser. So is Joe. The 2 of them had a lot of fun together, and a lot of the best moments in the movie are things that kind of we came up with on the set together, which are really fun. And even stuff we ended up cutting is really hilarious, fun stuff between Ben and Johnny. I think Joe is an incredibly playful actor, super fun. He's always having a good time and finding things, and I love that about him. And Pedro and Vanessa too. Yeah.
You get to introduce 2, I think, game-changing characters into the MCU: Silver Surfer and Galactus. Now, I've always been saying if you're going to bring Galactus in, he's got to feel like this is like a turning point event for the MCU that Galactus shows up. And I think you nailed that.
Oh, cool.
Talk to me about introducing those characters and any challenges involved in that.
I mean, huge challenges because Galactus is enormous, right? And so how do you capture that scale? One of the first things I did is I went out to lunch with John Dykstra, who was the VFX supervisor on Star Wars and is a legend and Spider-Man and so many amazing things. And I was talking to him about our challenges there, and Star Wars, beginning of Star Wars, famous, the Imperial Destroyer goes over the top of Lens and we feel how big that thing is. But part of the reason why we know how big it is because we see little windows and little doors and all these little scale cues, right? Problem with Galactus' ship, there are no tiny windows and tiny doors because that ship is built for a 1,000-foot tall space vampire. So it was about how do you constantly have scale reference? How do you have things in frame that tell you how big that guy is, right? And so we went to great lengths to do that. We also, had a great actor playing him, and he was wearing this incredible suit built by our amazing costume designer, Alex Byrne. It had all that detail and weight. So he was there in all of his glory, and we put him up really high and the Fantastic Four super far down below. So we had the right sort of eye lines and distance. And then we filmed him like a miniature, It's like when you film Mount Rushmore, it's completely in focus. Everything there is completely in focus. When you film one of our faces, you fall off, ears go out of focus. It's the difference between something incredibly large and something incredibly small. And so it's the same when you film a miniature. If you've got a little rocket like this, but you want to make it look like it's 2,000 feet long, you have to flood it with light so that everything's in focus. You have to, use sort of optical tricks to make that happen. So that's what we did for filming Ralph as Galactus, was to try to, make sure everything was in focus. And then we just used incredible CG work as well. Dust and little bits of smoke and all that detail just got made deeper and more realistic, so that we could, you could believe that this guy was 1,000 feet tall.
Before we wrap up here, what are you hoping that people get out of the Fantastic Four First Steps when they see it this weekend?
Well, I hope that they love it. Obviously, I hope that they enjoy the world, that they respond to the family aspect of it, really, because this is a movie that's all about family, and they were such a bold and radical idea back in the '60s to center a superhero team around a real family. This was what made them so special. They are us. They just also happen to have superpowers, and I think that relatability is key, and I hope folks find that when they go to the theater.
Matt, this has been great, man. I appreciate your time. I look forward to people seeing it in the movie, and I can't wait to see it again myself. So,
awesome.
Thanks a lot, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for checking out the show. If you like what we're laying down, please subscribe to our channel and click the bell to receive notifications for all of our latest stuff.